Hey there team, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to Worth It Then, Worth It Now. Oh, I have to make sure I don't get this wrong. Apologies, it's been a hot second since I put a video up on this channel. I've had a few weeks off, but I'm hoping to be a bit more consistent and regular because those who have found my little project here seem to be enjoying it immensely, which is to say, I cover games of yesteryear. 10 years plus removed has been the rule we've been experimenting with. It's been really interesting seeing how quickly games on Steam, I am Steam centric after all, have changed over just a short decade. And 10 years ago from now, 2016, was the absolute cradle of the modern indie game phenomena. I'm getting on a bit of a side tangent, but I'm what to do. Don't get me wrong, indie games and the Xbox Indie Arcade, like that was a whole thing first, but this experiment on this channel in many ways represents the tip of the spear when games went from, 1,000 released on Steam a year to current years on track to release 22,000. Anyway, Offworld Trading Company, that's the game we're talking about today. It's probably why you clicked, so apologies for the little rant intro. Now, I've been wanting to line these games up on a sale where possible. That's been the thing, but I'm also straying off path, experimenting a bit more. This is almost 10 years ago to the day when it was released, 29th of April in 2016 apparently, and I played a lot of this back in the day. I have very fond memories. The particular place that I was at, the posting I was on, we had quite a few lads in the divisions that were interested in playing stuff like this. It was sort of a lot of them on the tail end of an engineering degree, right? So the idea of this economic competitive multiplayer game, however, I've been playing it single player and I've been having a great time on my own. I played well more than the normal hour revisit. I'm gonna play some more actually. I'm falling back down it. But you have to realize that at the time, this was incredibly unique. Even 4X's in their proto time, I think Stellaris came out around this time, like they still had heavy hangovers of combat being the core of what makes them tick. And so Offworld Trading Company is kind of in the title, but I just want to impress for those that weren't there or maybe aren't remembering it as well. This was really unique at the time. The idea that you're essentially competing businesses on Mars, but I believe there's like an IO expansion. I haven't got all the DLCs, but I might get them actually. But you're all on like a plot of land on Mars and there are different resources scattered around the map. There are certain like tier 2 recipes, which will be things like glass goes, it's a kiln that you put silicon through so you can harvest silicon and create that, and they're fairly high end. But as far as like the tier list, it's not that high. It's all still quite graspable. If you wanted to compare the resources and your knowledge of them to something time appropriate like Warcraft 3, I know that was a bit older, but that really pioneered the idea of having very bespoke small unit amounts compared to, blobbing, for example. Having a dozen or half a dozen troops that you'd really want to learn what was for what. And this transported in a really unusual way. So there's no combat. There is an antagonistic component, which is probably my least favorite part, where you can send pirates after people or do electric shockwaves to slow down their production. But for the most part, the core of it is trying to up value your business, your market, based on the back of harvesting resources and selling them on, in many cases, to other players, and trying to respond in kind of real time and in a very short frame, if you're going to have like a half an hour match or something like that, and try and leverage as much of a profit margin as you possibly can in the supply demand space. It's unique as anything, and like I said, I had a great time back in the day, but it's not really for the faint of heart. Coming back to it now, I was getting my ass kicked quite a bit. Now, I've played it for a few hours tonight, and let's say I've gotten up to speed a bit, finding my footing. But it is one of those things. Look, maybe there are sweats that have deconstructed this game over the last 10 years, but at least for someone coming in like me that's just interested in an economic, bloodthirsty game, it is one of those things where there is no one viable path to victory. There are, dynamism is in the dictate. You really need to flex and react as the market requires. And if you over-invest in a market, which is something that you're probably going to want to do, you'll realize there's a hole in the market. Electronics are selling for 300 units. And, the water stockpile you're on is selling for like 3 or 4. Who cares if you've got 500 water? You're better off just sitting on it and hoarding it than actually selling it, because you're going to get pennies on the dollar, quite literally. So maybe you go and build up a glass kiln or a chemical factory. And there are lots of little things on the back end so you can tweak it so it auto resupplies. So you might not have enough silicon for a glass kiln, but you can force it to buy from the market, and you gotta be careful, you get yourself in trouble. I think by default, a lot of the things auto turn off if they're running negative into the market, like it figures it all out in the moment. But you can override that if you have some sort of big brain plan. But the actual loop itself is fairly basic, but it is all very overwhelming. There's tutorials. I jumped in there like a big dick boy because I'd played it all before, and I kind of regret I might go back and do some of the tutorials, but I've figured it out broadly off of memory alone. But essentially, you place down your base at the beginning. You get to send off little ping probe things to see the fog of war and try and figure out where the resources are, because geolocation matters a lot. Like the aforementioned pirates, they can be set up to zone lanes basically, so depending on where you place your base, you might be carrying water from across the map and they'll put it right in the middle of the transport. But those same transports that auto harvest it, the further away they are, the further the cost, the fuel expenses of running that convoy get. And each map's going to have different rarities, and it's all shuffled up. Like I went onto a map where it literally had a handful of water, and that was it. I think it was 3 tiles full stop. Again, the black market selling all these interesting antagonistic things also has utility. You can have like claims, and you can dig up the ground and hope to generate a water tile and then claim that. On claims, that's the core of the loop. Funnily enough, apart from watching the market and buying and selling, essentially you probe the map, you look at the fog of war, you try and strategically place your base. I'm pretty sure it all happens in real time in multiplayer. It keeps auto-pausing in single player, but the idea is the more you stuff around pinging and trying to find the perfect spot, the more behind the ball you are, because the other players are already spawning in ahead of you, and then as soon as you spawn, you see the whole map, and then you can start making moves. So it is a bit of you got to pick your start. Do you false start and put your base in the wrong space, but you're the first one down so you can start locking down claims? Or do you wait off a bit until you get a more perfect spot? It's very clever, but ultimately you place down your base and then you'll have something like 4 or 5 claims. It depends, each character's different. It reminds me of Terraformers. That's another great game, though that's turn-based. And on Mars, actually. Oh, wonderful. But you pick your character, and the character has their own quirks, their own resources they lean into. Like I'm pretty sure I remember there being robot guys, and they're a bit more silicon heavy as opposed to say food and water. And you place down your claims. You got to be careful you don't go really gung-ho, because you can brick yourself really quick. And obviously aforementioned dynamism, you've got other players on the map, AI or whatever, and they're going to start building their industry in certain directions. So maybe you do actually hold off a little bit before you start committing to something. And then you got to figure out, are you flat? Are you tall? Are you going to buy a whole bunch of food farms and sell them to the market? That's one of the matches I just had, was literally that. There are these production buildings that are kind of necessary, and you can sell surplus, food being a great example, a greenhouse, and that requires water and oxygen, I believe. But as long as you maintain and control that bottleneck, you can make a surplus. But because it's something that is sort of a life survival requirement of your colony, like I only played as the one human chick, but different guys have different quirks, but they all come back to having a resource or two that they actually have to consume to maintain. So you might find yourself in a spot where you're not producing enough food or water or whatever, and so you're constantly being forced to buy it at market rate at that time. And as long as you keep doing that, chances are you're just going to keep driving the price up. Or maybe one of the other players is filling the gap in the market by producing water to keep the price down, but every dollar you spend on that, they scoop up themselves. So yeah, you balance claims, bringing things in, freight. There'll be auctions occasionally to throw a spanner in the works. You can upgrade your base for more claims. That's the main progression. That's the main way of doing things. And you can just pay, and it calculates it. It says if you pay this, you'll be able to upgrade it, and the idea being that it uses that petty cash to buy whatever resources you're missing. But if you're more self-sustaining, again a bit more flat, maybe you're generating silicon and carbon and all sorts of stuff that maybe you're just hoarding, you're not really selling it and it's not going for a big price, but all of a sudden the cost of your buildings are going to come down because you're diversifying the root build mats and upgrading your base for new claims. That's another path into it as well. Now I think they've changed it, unless maybe multiplayer works differently. I haven't played multiplayer too much. I will just say, because I ducked into the discussion forums, there's some pretty loud wankers throwing their weight around saying multiplayer's broken, rah rah rah. If you dig through the comments, it's pretty apparent that the devs still duck in occasionally, out of a sense of pride to check in and work on it, but being that it's a 10-year-old game and they're only an indie studio, this is Mohawk Games. They went on to make Old World Under Hooded Horse, so they're on a good trajectory. But I mean, they were published under Stardock, who are a bit of a shadow of what they once were. But my point is, and not to carry water for the devs, but they've made it clear that you can select a specific beta branch from the Steam install menu, which is pretty easy stuff. A lot of games do this for different, advanced builds, especially in early access. So you can roll it back to an older version, which still has years of updates, and you can play it multiplayer in that version. But like I said, you have to dig through the fatheads to realize that there is a solution in there. It just gets buried by goobers. But like I said, you can still play it single player. I'm enjoying this sort of campaign, which is more of a string of scenarios together with a little bit of permanency, and that's fine. At the end of the day, I'm here to play the economic game. I don't really need a story or anything like that. But I'm pretty sure you could buy out each other's companies. Or I could be conflating this with other games, but that's how it was in the old days. And it seems what they've replaced it with, maybe I'm misremembering, maybe it always was like this for single player, but there's like a kind of neutral core base at the center of the map. Think major powers, China, USA, that sort of thing. You're an independent contractor trying to make money with your own business, but you're still kind of working in vicinity of these guys. I don't know the full ins and outs of it, but it would seem that a run goes for 7 days in the game, 7 souls, and the guy at the end of it that's contributed the most to building up that central colony is the one that's going to win. So, you may well be bullying out the market and killing it, but if you're not putting your money into investing into the major power that's local, you're still going to lose. So I think that's kind of cool. And, I've played a couple of runs and they don't really go for more than 20, 25, 30 minutes, depending on how much you're stopping and pausing to figure out what you're doing. It's really cool. It's very reactionary and it holds up. It holds up really well. And like I said, I'm coming back at this as a very different angle. I don't know if I ever really played it single player at initial launch. It was the multiplayer, was the gimmick, was what got me in the door and all my mates, and we all gave it a go and we had a good time. It was a different time, but honestly, it holds water, man. I've already put a couple of hours in when I didn't mean to put that much time in. I've already over-invested. I'm already interested in playing some more tonight because I am attracted to this sort of, I know it's boring for some, but others will salivate like me. The idea of kind of market manipulation and management in a competitive environment. It's interesting. It's unusual. It's a nice change from just shooting terrorists in the head, Anyway, Offworld Trading Company. Released about 10 years ago. I think it still holds up. Apparently, it's still playable multiplayer if you just jump through the right hoops. Not necessarily on sale at the time of this video, but the video is still evergreen by design, so maybe you come across this in the future because it's on sale, in which case, hello. Welcome to the channel, if you made it this far, all the way to the end of the video. Alright, we'll put a pin in it there. I might do the same thing that I've been doing on the main channel. If you have made it this far, again, hello, welcome, love you, because you clearly have enjoyed my video long enough to stay this long. Maybe think about dropping a comment, dropping a thumbs up. It can be just a throwaway comment. It's not a big deal, but I'm finding that sort of engagement stuff, playing the game, is actually incredibly helpful. And that's why I backload it here, because the people that are actually going to want to do that and help push my channel are the ones still listening right now. Anyway, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.